Today, we'll catch up on several big moves, both boasts and calls for help from Tesla's competitors. So first, a video from Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, and why she says they're still the leaders in electric vehicles. Second, in the meantime, the latest data is showing that Tesla's Model Y is just a hair from #1 best-selling model in the US. Third, Rivian CFO says their Gen 2 production is slowed down due to issues with a supplier. And finally, we've got new reports showing how auto dealers are struggling big time. And we'll look at the latest bombshell announcement from Volkswagen and BMW as they call out for help. Jeff Lutz is a multi-decade supply chain executive, chief quality officer, and now CEO of his own high-tech manufacturing consulting firm. Jeff, so you saw this. We've been following closely. You've been kind of educating us as it goes. Vehicle inventory. Now we've got news about dealerships and all these things are piling up and we're starting to see it happen. And yet we've got Mary Barra still boasting away. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, great to be with you. This is a pretty dynamic time in the auto industry. I think we'll see both in abroad and in the US as well. So, start and stop with EV, with others, non-Tesla and some transitions occurring. But, let's hear what she has to say and process it.
Okay. So she was interviewed in a new interview. Our workforce is quite young. They're joining because they want to be part of a company that's going to change and lead in the move to electric vehicles. This is just one piece of this video. Let's watch it.
Can the legacy car makers move fast enough?
I believe yes. I absolutely believe yes, we can. And I think yes, we are. Our workforce is quite young. Most of our technical talent has been with the company less than 5 years. And so I would say for about 40%, they're joining because they want to be part of a company that is going to change and lead in the move to electric vehicles.
So too soon to ask you about your legacy is what I'm hearing.
Well, I think legacy is what someone else writes. I mean, I hope everybody knows I love this company. I believe in the team.
Barra is GM's second longest serving CEO, but she's showing no sign of slowing down. And for good reason. The future of this iconic American company is riding on whether or not she's right about the road ahead.
I think this is one of the most exciting times in our industry. There's so much change right now that makes it, as for an engineer, it just makes it super exciting.
Okay, well, I mean, so obviously she's going to say what she's going to say, but there's a huge disconnect. They're still positioning GM as the leader. She's still saying that, the future is electrification when all of her actions showing something different. What's your take on what you heard there?
You just got to look at the percentage of vehicles that they're shipping. And, they're sending a message. If you look at the goals they set up 2 to 4 years ago, they were for much more aggressive EV adoption. You look at their investments that they were doing with LG on the Ultium battery. Now, they amongst, I would, compared to other legacy automakers, they are following through on a portion of those investments, but many of them have been stalled and slowed down. And really, what fundamentally happened is they have tried to produce vehicles in various different segments: a truck, a crossover, a small sedan. And none of these vehicles are not only contribution margin profitable, but I would guess there's no variable profitability available as well. If you were able to pull the highly underutilized fixed assets out of the picture and just say, for what we can sell this thing for, how much is the bucket of components and the transformation cost of those bucket of components? And, scale doesn't solve everything when your starting point is too expensive. You can't, the problem you run into is you can never get to that escape velocity because you made these poor decisions on product and design. And it's something you actually wouldn't want to scale, because if you did scale it, it could actually, prove to be terminal for your company. So it looks like several of the legacy automakers took a big swing on EVs over the last 3 to 4 years and missed, put a bunch of product into inventory. It's not competitive. A $65,000 Cadillac Lyriq and versus the specs and capability on a $45,000 to $50,000 Model Y, they're not going to compare. And That's why you saw the aging inventory. That's why you saw the problems. So now they have to set up and do this next swing. And is it in 2027? It keeps getting pushed out. Both of the major legacy automakers are on the record saying that they may not produce an EV profitably this decade. They were on the record, I think, earlier this year in June, but it came out of their mouths. This isn't people speaking for them. This is what they said. So they pulled back. They went to hybrids, and they started ramping that effort back up. But and what they're saying is that, well, we put product out there and the customers don't want it. But the full story is the customers don't want that value per dollar that they were putting out there. What they want is they want what will happen with EV, which is price parity and below. They want better features, better performance, cleaner for the environment, and honestly, lower fuel costs and lower total cost of ownership, and what you'll get with an EV. So it is the better product. That's why all the legacy CEOs saying this is our future. We know it will be our future. They just have to figure out how to get from where they are today to being able to build something profitable.
Okay, that's Mary Barra. She was interviewed by CBS Sunday Morning. That's that clip we just got from there. So they're talking about her legacy. Okay.
Yeah.
But we'll
there's
see.
no coincidence that the ad spend from General Motors to CBS, NBC, and so forth is significant. I was just trying to pull up some publicly available information. Some of the stuff they've scrubbed out of the public sphere, and you'd have to go into other disclosures, but they spend on the order of billions of dollars. So when you see these puff pieces, this CBS interview, there were questions that could have been asked in the interview that would have been, I think, more challenging and more revealing of, why are we where you are today in EVs versus what you said you would be a couple of years ago. But, that ad spend carries a lot of weight.
I think so. Okay. So what matters more is who actually selling the most cars. And so we've got new data to share with you that says that Tesla Model Y is very close to becoming the #1 best-selling vehicle in the US for the first time ever. New data from Experian. So through the second quarter, Model Y had 2.8% share, its highest share ever, up from 2.6% in Q1, just a hair below the Toyota RAV4. This is by model. The Model Y is already outselling the Ford F-150, both the ICE and EV versions. The Model Y was the best-selling car in the world in 2023. It is yet to take the #1 spot in the US, but that could soon change. So this Wolf Street, just a hair from #1 Toyota RAV4. Former #1 Ford F-150 is #3. Stellantis plunges off the greed cliff. EV share rises to 9%. So this is the top 5 best-selling models in the US. Is as of the second quarter, right? So #1 is Toyota RAV4, but it in the first half it dropped. So now that gives Model Y rising to 2.8%. And then you got the Ford F-150, Honda CR-Vs, and Chevrolet Silverados. What do you think about this list here, Jeff?
Well, it's interesting. The trucks for both Ford and GM, those are huge margin drivers for them. When you can ship a very large vehicle, consumers place value on that is beyond what your underlying cost structure is to build it. And actually, the smaller the vehicle you build, the more difficult and more challenged unit economics and gross margins actually become, because you're still doing that transformation to get this product to be a complete vehicle, but consumers actually place less value on smaller products as it relates to vehicles, I should say, and that component becomes that gross margin component becomes a lot more difficult. So what Toyota's been able to do with the RAV4, with the Corolla, and so forth. Remember, these are vehicles with average transaction prices that are much lower than Tesla's, and so when you see Tesla Model Y moving up in those ranks, that vehicle costs a lot more than the Corolla or a Camry or a RAV4. The F-150 and Chevy Silverado, this is a United States thing. So if you're watching this video abroad, trucks are very popular here. And, those two companies are perceived to, making two of the better products. And, that's what's happening there. That is a secular, more segmented thing. So we'll have to see where this goes. But I mean, Tesla Model Y, the crossover piece is very popular here. And I think Tesla is going to continue on with this model. When you have a vehicle that is this popular across the world, I think Tesla is going to refresh it. Who knows? Maybe one of these next generation vehicles, they may be miniaturizing it a bit, stripping some things out, allowing it to get smaller in mass, and be able to take some cost out. We'll see what happens. But I think this Tesla Model Y is going to be a very important thing for Tesla's future, and I think it's going to continue and do really well. It's going to get the number one. And the question is how much cost can Tesla take out, and how much of that cost structure can they reduce to bring the price down for consumers? Finally, one other important note: all these companies, Ford, GM, Toyota, they ship many different models. If you look at the number of models they build, it's in excess of 20, 30, 40, 50 or more in some of these companies. So when they have a top selling vehicle on that list, remember they had to produce 49 other vehicles to get the kind of volumes you're seeing. And you're seeing big volumes. You'll see 10 million units from a Toyota, for example, per year. But they're spreading that volume across many different products. Why is this important? Well, Tesla essentially has 5 products in different configurations of those 5 products. And about 70% of Tesla's production is Model Y. And what that means is that purchasing power, that leverage that Tesla has is greater than any of those other actual companies have with the supply base. Even companies with much greater volume than Tesla, that volume per part number is what is key with suppliers. So when you see Model Y up on that list, the thing that I think about is the amount of leverage that Tesla has within the supply base with that one, that one vehicle. It's 70% of their production volume, and that one vehicle and that one set of part numbers produces all those volumes, where those other automakers have to produce so many more models, so many more vehicle types. And if you're one of those companies, Toyota, Ford, whomever, and you're going to suppliers saying, here's the next program, they'll be like, oh great, that's great, but is it going to be a hit or not? And with Tesla, just the amount of volume concentration they get out of Model Y is a huge benefit for them and their suppliers.
Yeah, so it's unbelievable. Tesla Model Y is already the number one best-selling vehicle in the world. It's about to become the number one best-selling vehicle here in the U.S. And like you were saying, in the U.S., it usually is trucks. Ford F-150, I think, held it for multiple years in a row. What do you think this Cybertruck, Jeff, where do you think it'll end up becoming once that is in full production next year or 2 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing what the Cybertruck does now at $100,000 plus average transaction price. Yeah, Herbert, I think when we see the August, potentially September registrations on trucks, I think you're going to see that the Cybertruck has surpassed all other EV trucks combined in the US in terms of registrations. It takes the registrations lag a bit. So, I mean, that's what you're seeing. And so the way to think of the Cybertruck is it's 3 years after the Rivian R1T in F-150. Cybertruck's been in production for almost a year. They've been in production for 3 years. And they live at, a price point that's 20, 30,000 below the Cybertruck today. Cybertruck's on the Foundation series. So when Cybertruck gets to greater volumes, they bring their cost structure down. I think it's already shown at greater than 100,000, it can pass vehicles that cost meaningfully less. It also shows you that those companies haven't been able to get the profitability in 3 years, and Tesla should cross over into profitability probably, if not later this year, in the first quarter of the next year. So it just shows you that they're on different paths, both in their own cost structure and gross margins, as well as their acceptance with consumers, that they're diverging, and Tesla is beginning to outstrip them. So there's still going to be a large kind of chasm for people to get over of, a gas powered truck versus an electric truck. But it starts with, having, this supremacy or, just dominance in EV trucks, and then seeing where it goes from there. I don't think we know it's not necessarily going to be one of those linear things in terms of what happens to Cybertruck's total available market. Every time that thing ticks, 10 or 20,000 below its current average transaction price, I don't think we know yet. And we only see North America. We only see the US. They just started deliveries in Canada. They just started deliveries in Mexico. So we're at, global penetration of, a very small percentage in terms of where this product can go. So I think the sky's the limit. They just got to get the cost structure now.
This is the Toyota RAV4. This is the Rivian. And so there's a story that came out that said that Rivian Gen 2 production slowed down due to issues with supplier. So this is something that I absolutely wanted to get your feedback on. You have such knowledge in terms of manufacturing. And of course, you've been following the Rivian story quite well. So Jeffrey analyst Philip Houchois published Monday a new research note on Rivian. They've visited the firm, the facilities. And what's interesting is Jeffrey still gives them a buy rating. Okay, despite concerns over Rivian's fourth quarter gross margin break-even goal, they're not going to get there, but they're still giving a $17 price target, 45% upside on the shares. The CFO, Claire Madonahue, said that the joint venture between Rivian and Volkswagen, they gave that update. Then they told them that there's a supplier shortage currently disrupting the Gen 2 production ramp. While we fear production issues may delay fourth quarter gross margin break even, we expect to see material improvement in variable costs in Q3. Supplier challenges for the quarter ending this week. Issues with a supplier causing a shortage of components for the new Enduro motor. Situation continues to fuel internal debate between outsourcing and vertical integration. What do you think's happening here, Jeff?
Well, first off, Rivian's building their own motors, I believe. So you're still going to need supplier inbound parts. I'm not sure what he's actually talking about, but Rivian had a very public proclamation in the beginning of this year, maybe even late last year, is that by the end of this year, 2024, that they would get to break even and start becoming profitable. And then they started putting kind of qualifications on contribution margin, with and without fixed costs and so forth. At the end of the day, vehicle purchases above, the whole auto industry in the US is down from the early estimates from the beginning of this year. Beginning of this year, there were pretty lofty estimates of getting to 16 million units in the US. And I think now we're tracking somewhere between 15 and 15.2. I know August was a pretty good month. It was a 5-week month, and it's also seasonably a pretty good time for vehicle purchases. But the industry's down, and Rivian makes these vehicles that are, $70, $80, $90, $100,000. So they're certainly going to be under stress as the whole auto industry is down. Interest rates are still very high, even though the Fed cut. The Fed cut for the short end of the curve. The longer end of the curve, 5, 7, 10 years the rates are pretty steady over the last week, even after they cut, and even some went up. So, and I know Rivian's doing some deals in terms of financing, but at the end of the day, their consumers are under stress. It's more difficult to get money. And so they may be having an issue either with volume and orders, or they could actually be having a traditional supplier shortage. It is possible. But all I'll say is that this goal for getting to profitability was very public. And if you're not going to hit that goal, one of the things that could happen is, I've got a supplier issue. I can't build as many cars as I used to. And then it's like, okay, it's somebody else's problem. Even though, quite frankly, it's your company's problem, because if you're not breaking even, you're losing money. Your utilization's lower. That's costing you money. At the end of the day, it's a problem. But at least it wasn't something that was under your direct control. I don't know why companies do this, and I'm not saying Rivian is doing this. I'm just saying that it just, okay, there's a supplier problem. But at the end of the day, can you show us that even if you were to be able to produce, I don't know how many vehicles, 20,000 vehicles in a quarter, are you getting to break even or not? And could you show that math? That'd be interesting to see if this analyst, dug a few layers deeper into that conversation. So break it down: part shortage, Enduro motor. you're gonna have these issues, but you've got to, as a company, and you're trying to get profitable, you've got to be able to get through these issues, work through them, and not have it be the cause for you not making this very public goal. So we'll see how it plays out.
It's actually worse if you read on the article. So the CFO said they didn't quantify the impact or when the issues might be resolved. They should communicate more at the time of Q3 results. But look at this. The ramp of R1 Gen 2 is slower than anticipated. The limited inventory of Gen 1 and Gen 2 models could slow deliveries. So it's not looking really good here. Last week, Rivian officially started shipping out models of a Gen 2 R1T and R1S EVs with the new tri-motor configuration. So, gross margin,
Rivian,
like you said.
Rivian makes a good product. It was too expensive. Their fixed cost structure was too high, but when consumers like their Rivians, okay, we can agree or disagree in terms of, where they're going with full self-driving and so forth, but they make a product that consumers love. The cost structure's not right. They have to get volumes up. They have to get costs down. So now you see them talking about splitting, like, okay, we're going to see these big variable cost improvements are those engineering changes and supplier changes that they made to take the per unit, the 1 unit, unit economics down. But in aggregate, when you start overlaying the fixed cost structure, that's what you're trying to see, like from a contribution margin perspective, are you profitable or not? And if you're not on that trajectory to get there, I could see like, okay, well, we have this problem or we have that problem. At the end of the day, your shareholders, your board, you've got to figure this stuff out, and you've got to figure out when you're going to do it. And you have to have answers too. You have to have, we think it's bound by this amount of time, and we think we're going to resolve it by this amount of time. But these things are difficult. These products are difficult. They're complex. These things are going to come up. But, the question is now when. So to me, this is almost kind of like a soft, warning for the quarter of, hey, we're bullish on the company. Here's some information we heard. And now you see this article that comes out. It's almost kind of like, it's a couple months. It's kind of that period of time, a couple of weeks or so before the quarter ends, and you kind of issue this soft guidance in terms of where you think you'll be in the next quarter. So maybe they're trying to take some of the edge off too. There's a little bit of a PR element here, doing it through an analyst.
Good to hear your perspective, because you've been here, you've done this before. Big corporations, you've probably interviewed by analysts and done PR yourself. So another story that we're going to cover here is the U.S. government talking about a ban of software from Chinese car companies if they do make it into the United States. This is not a new story, but there's some additional info that we're getting here. Biden plots ban on Chinese self-driving car software because of a security threat. So, if you are a Chinese car and you have self-driving technology, or you partner with a U.S. car, by the way, and you're the self-driving tech in that car, the U.S. government is proposing, by the U.S. Department of Commerce, on the import and sales that rely on these Chinese software. And the actual dates now that they've placed here is it takes effect on new models from 2027 onward, and a further ban on Chinese hardware will come into force from 2030. It'll affect Russian and Chinese technology, block the sales of cars, including hardware or software designed to connect cars to the internet, including microchips used to receive and transmit information such as location or traffic data, or to update self-driving tech. We know that China did the same thing, but they gave, I think, a list of 4 things that if you do these things, then it's okay, which is keeping that data in the US and in the country, not letting it get out. At least that's how they've done it there. What's your thoughts about this ban?
Yeah, there's a long history on this. There's a long history in cellular, is on the infrastructure side as well with Huawei.
Yeah.
There's one with Silicon too, with Huawei again, and others in ZTE on the mobile phone. There's a long history of this going back and forth in the US. I'm more of a proponent, and there's TikTok and so forth. I'm more of a proponent of what's the data, what's critical, how do we have it housed here and under audit and under proper surveillance here in the US, so that the best innovators win. At the same time, the US is putting highly punitive tariffs on the vehicles themselves. So I don't know why they have to go in and put this one on top versus just focusing on the issue of, they're concerned about dumping of vehicles and the uncompetitive nature. This one's, I know this is a different issue. This is more of they're worried about the surveillance aspect of this, but I would more figure out like, what are those elements? How do you get the data housed here? How do you get it properly audited? And go from there. But I just, it doesn't seem to fit. It's almost like this is a rule or a law for something that, may exist in the future, but can't exist now because they really can't import anything profitably here now. So it seems a little bit disjointed to me. And then you've Tesla over in China right now. Obviously, they have approval to do this work, and they figured out a way to meet China's requirements on data. And I think that's actually more the right approach. But then again, I don't have a security clearance. I don't know what the government sees, or they may have way more information than we have. And maybe there is an issue trying to control this. So they'd rather outright ban it at this point. So I think that's honestly where we're at on this one. We'll have to see how it plays out. But I think the core element here are the tariffs on the vehicles. And I think we haven't seen the end of that conversation either. I think that may even get more aggressive.
Okay. Meanwhile, the U.S. government, and obviously it's happening in every country, they're trying to protect their legacy auto dealers. Here we got 2 new reports that the car dealers are struggling, and we're also got more information about Volkswagen and BMW. So China car dealers incurred a combined loss of 138 billion yuan, also $20 billion in the U.S. in the first 8 months of the year. They were forced to sell new cars at sizable discounts. So it's a huge, huge hit. Dealer inventory, something you've been reporting on. By the way, if you want to follow Jeff on his X account, he has been telling us about this in the US. Here in China, though, you can see that they've been forcing them to sell at lower prices. And so it really does matter. It does show up on their bank statements. These guys are, I think there's the losses were flagged in an emergency report in the financial difficulties and shutdown risk, because typically these dealerships are one of the biggest, biggest companies in the stock exchange there. So yeah, there's a collapse of both regional and national domestic dealerships due to capital chain rupture. Money losing. This one company called China Grand Automotive Services, they were delisted from the stock exchange after 20 consecutive days of being down there. So this is all happening now. And then I'll combine this with this story that the dealers here in the U.S., they are joining the UAW in the union in charging Stellantis with reckless decisions. So the UAW, obviously they're threatening to do strikes. Well, now they've got the dealers on their side. Dealer groups claim that reckless short-term decision-making to secure record profits made them anemic and diminished. So they're blaming them for the, stuffing the market. I guess that's what's happening. So here's an example. One of the biggest dealerships, Florida, Michigan, Ohio dealership, Ralph Mahalik. They basically sent 2 letters to the Stellantis council, and we've never seen this before. We don't understand what's going on. How did we get in this predicament? Oh boy, there you go. If you want to hear directly from them, they're now complaining and they're losing money. We've got to get through our current problem of too much inventory before we can start looking at ordering again. We've got to get to the sales rate up until we can eat through this overage inventory. We can blow out a bunch of cars in 69 days. We can get back to ordering normal again. There you go. Directly from the dealers themselves. Well, you and I, you've been reporting on this. Here it is. Okay. People out there still think that there's no stuffing going on and that GM is looking great on their financials. Well, this is why. These guys' financials, they've been stuffing them and they're complaining now. We can't do this forever. Yeah,
for Stellantis, we'll take the stories in reverse. They have the highest inventory right now, dealer inventory, wholesale network. They have the highest inventory. They have vehicles ranging from 150 to 200 plus days of inventory. And they are accused, and you see by multiple dealers, of literally, stuffing the channels. And you have this coordination of privately owned dealerships, and then you have these big mega auto OEMs, and then you have the unions, and it's all disjointed, and they all have different goals. You have the unions, cracking the web, trying to get Stellantis to open more factories and to expand factories. Then you have the dealers on the other side saying, you've shipped me too much product. You're slow down. Like this is reckless. And you're going to have to share and help me in discounting these vehicles. And this can unravel you could have a major global automaker absolutely implode right in front of our eyes, just based on this management of inventory below. And with Stellantis. Now you go back one more story with China, and just all this like commentary of, China's taking over. China's building a lot of cars. China is exporting a lot of cars. People are buying these cars. These are all facts. But you have to look at what's happening here, no pun intended, under the hood. And if you look at what's going on with dealer inventory, you have a situation there where this could blow up. This could be a major thing for them as well. And guess what brand? One of the major brands that ships into dealers and wholesale networks in China, it's BYD. So I made a comment on X of, just there's a lot of conversation about, the ascension of BYD, and they are doing well. They are doing well in China, but you have to look at the takeaway here for me is like, you have to look at the whole network from, supply-based manufacturing all the way to the end consumer. And is it really healthy or not? And we don't even know the real numbers in China. It's very difficult to get these numbers. And I could see this even being more disjointed in terms of the auto OEMs and the dealer networks and how they're going to work through this. And I can also see the government getting more involved as well. But this is starting to turn into more like bad money, more money after, it's bad money chasing bad things, especially here. You see the U.S. loans and grants that are going out to Stellantis right now for expansion. And here you've got these dealer networks that are stuffed with product. And this isn't, I wouldn't say this is a 1 quarter issue right now that they have to unravel. This has been going on the entire year and even going back into last year. So keep an eye on these inventory levels. Keep an eye on what these dealers are saying. This is the canary in the coal mine. They could figure it out and it could be okay, but you can also have 1 or 2 of these major automakers blow up.
That's what I wanted to ask you. You answered it, which is this just a 1 quarter thing? Your sense is it may not be. Let's follow them along. But these are canary in the coal mines that you're saying. Okay, can Volkswagen get out of this predicament? Here's all the production factories that are on the closure list. You and I did a show recently where we showed that 30% of factories in Europe are under 50% utilization. And then you're saying that if a factory is under 50% utilization, that's either bad money or
the target 70 or 80% is the floor. Yeah.
30% of factories are under 50% utilization. These are on the closure list. Look how many of them there are, both in almost all their China ones, Germany directly, that are on the shrink list. A couple of them. 3 of the 6 planned battery factories are canceled too. That's Volkswagen. Volkswagen will likely close only 2 factories, announce more later to reduce the market reaction. So they won't kind of shock you. Negotiations are ongoing. Reduce workforce. We already talked about that. Just massive workforce reduction. But in China, Volkswagen had just 58% capacity utilization last year. 2024 won't be better. Mercedes sent out last night after market close a profit warning. Free cash flow now expected to be significantly below the prior year level. They're currently down 6% over the news. AJ was warning people, take a look at their free cash flow. The China weakness, the company struggling. This is about to show up in their P&L, financials, and now we're seeing it. So yeah, this is their announcements. Full year guidance, they adjusted it. So we're telling you, people aren't listening, but it's, like you say, right? We don't know yet, but these are canaries. But sometimes all these little things, all of a sudden, it can happen.
Yeah, and the length of your supply network, your manufacturing process time, and then your sales network, or that total span and number of nodes in days or weeks or months, that's really important. Tesla has the lowest or the smallest, shortest span and fewest number of nodes of any automaker I'm aware of. And so when there is a slowdown that's happening with external macro forces, Tesla will enter into that slowdown and come out of that slowdown faster than anyone else. Some of these others, they may enter in and you're going to see this long, expansive, And this is where, things could really blow up. I mean, Stellantis have been having issues for more than a year. And you see the dealers starting to complain now. You see the inventories growing, and you see the same with VW, maybe to a lesser extent, but the impact in Europe could be pretty extensive for VW. And then Mercedes, they're issuing a free cash or a profit warning. These companies have been intense, or the transaction prices have done nothing but gone up over the last 7 years. But quite frankly, the labor cost, inflation costs, if they don't change the way that they build vehicles, this convergence is going to happen. You're competing against the Chinese, and you're competing against Tesla, both which have changed the way that vehicles are made in terms of cost structure and efficiency. And if you don't adjust and you try to compete, you could run into these situations. So we'll see if this is a 1 quarter thing. They can restructure, if they can come out of it. My prediction is a lot of these companies are going to have to enter into restructuring restructuring, and they're either going to come out of it with a kind of a brand new looking company, or they're going to several of them may merge.
I really appreciate you, Jeff. I know that this one was a longer show than we intended to do, but we covered quite a bit, right? You've got Mary still boasting that they're the leader. Meanwhile, you got Tesla Model Y almost becoming the best-selling car in the US. Rivian's complaining about supply issues. You got the auto dealers basically screaming at this point. And then you've got Volkswagen and BMW, both of them announcing that they're going to shut down factories or things like that. Volkswagen and Mercedes, correct. Thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate you.
Thanks,
follow him on his X account, the Jeff Lutz. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.